Well, for me, I have always forged relationships through working with other people. It hasn't been like networking, meaning like going to a cocktail reception and meeting people over a drink. It's been I've personally formed the relationships throughout my career by getting in the trenches and doing work with other people. And then it's only when you go through that experience that like you have that shared experience that you can always rely upon. And even if you don't touch base with somebody for a year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, when you reconnect, you're like, oh my gosh, remember that time we worked on that huge product launch? And you're like, and so it immediately kind of puts you back in that moment of that shared experience where you kind of had to trust somebody else. And that's where you form the bond. Now that can happen at a large company and it can happen at a small company. So, we all know of like the PayPal mafia and the Salesforce mafia and the Dropbox mafia and like all these people, really smart people that work together at a specific moment in time, but that can happen at a small company too. I worked for a small internet startup kind of earlier on in my career. I still touch base with like 2/3 of the people at that company all these years later. And for me, it's all about surrounding yourself with really great people, doing things that matter and having those shared experiences. And kind of the funny thing about that experience and others is that when you do that when you're young, whether you do it in a pocket in, a big company like Salesforce or Google or Dropbox or a small company, is like you're going to have those relationships forever. And what most people who are young don't even really realize is that you fast forward 20 years, if you're in your 20s, you fast forward 20 years, that's the generation that's going to be leading the industry. I always thought, I'm just working in a cubicle, answering the telephones next to this guy. Well, guess what? That guy went on to become the chief revenue officer of Dropbox. Or my former boss was the chief revenue officer of Zendesk and Miro. And like, you just think you're kind of kids working together, but you end up running the whole industry. And most people don't like think of those like, 10, 20 year time horizons, but it's really true, especially in the tech industry.